Hello, everyone. This is season 2, episode 1 of the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast. And yes, after over a month, we are back with brand new episodes, brand new content, original content, more ways that you can take control of your life through small steps every single day that are going to make lasting changes so that you can inspire more happiness in your life, whatever that means for you, more fulfillment in your life, whatever that means to you, and more joy in your life, whatever that means to you. But it's all driven by purpose. And we're going to kick off this season with the most popular topic from last season, and that is people pleasing. That's what this episode is going to be all about. I am so excited that this is the first topic because it's going to build a foundation for so much of what we will talk about during this season on this podcast. So without any further hesitation, let's get started. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Justin. This is the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast, the podcast where we use the philosophy of yoga in a very practical, very everyday way, one small step at a time to become happier people and people driven by purpose. Look, if you're brand new to this podcast and you're over here thinking, I don't want to learn about a whole bunch of yoga philosophy. That's not what I'm interested in. That's okay. What I do here on this podcast is I take the yoga philosophy that we study in practicing yoga and I bring it to you in a real world, everyday way because we are living our life day after day after day and we're constantly trying to become better versions of ourselves. Hence, why we need to use some building blocks to do that. And we're going to use philosophy to take small steps. So we're not going to be digging into crazy ancient text where we're trying to figure out what was said or what wasn't said or what we should kind of look at the context of that to mean. We're not doing that here. We're going step by step, day by day, into the lane of purpose, which is part of yoga philosophy, purpose. So I want to first thank all of you for your support through season 1. If you look back at the episodes on your podcast app or in the YouTube channel, you'll notice there were a lot of episodes in season 1. And I've decided to change this format to do season by season. And so from now until mid-December, we will be airing 10 brand new episodes. And those 10 episodes are going to be, they're carefully selected topics that are all driven from that baseline of living with purpose, purpose-driven actions. So a couple things I want to mention before we get started. I have a weekly newsletter that you can sign up for that if you have been part of this weekly newsletter, you have been getting it while there's been no new episode. So that's a bonus for you. It's free to sign up. The link is in the description of the video or the show notes, depending on where you're listening or watching this from. So sign up for that because there's things in there that you don't get from this podcast, wherever you're listening to it. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notification bell or hit the like button. Listen, those small actions that you can do help push this podcast out to more people. You can also leave me a rating if you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple or Amazon or wherever you pick up your podcasts from. Leaving ratings also helps push the podcast out even farther. And also make sure you watch the comments and the show notes for discount codes that I leave, especially for 2 of my favorite podcast partners, we'll call them. One is Kenzie's Sweet Treats, who is a locally based here in Ohio, where I live. She's a locally based baker who bakes some phenomenal things for all of your different celebrations. So make sure you check that out. And also Jasmine Lee Photography, who worked with me on all of the branding for this channel and for this podcast with pictures. And so the new pictures that you see are from Jasmine. And so you can also have your pictures done professionally by her with a discount in the show notes. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started in today's episode. There's 2 parts of today's episode. The first part that we're going to go into now is I want to talk to you a little bit about purpose before we get into the whole people-pleasing thing, because people-pleasing is an important subject to discuss, but we must start with the foundation of purpose. And then, so we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to go into the people-pleasing aspect of all this. So I want to first say all of this to you when, in regard to purpose. I want to say this to you right now. You already know how to act with purpose. Okay, you already know how to do this. On a basic, fundamental, human level, you know how to do this already. Why do you know how to do this already? I'm going to tell you why. Because when you need to eat or you need to drink something, you know that the purpose of filling your body up with either nutrition or water to stay alive, you know you have to reach for food or water. That's the purpose, right? That's the purpose of food. That's the purpose of water. Really, at its core, is to keep us alive and running. So you know that already. You also know that taking showers or baths or bathing daily is important, right? For your personal hygiene. You know this is important. You also know washing your hands is important after leaving the bathroom or going to the bathroom, because when you wash your hands after using the bathroom, you're preventing germ from going out everywhere. It's sanitary, right? You know the purpose of that. You also know that when you walk, or when you take a car, or when you take a bus or a train or a tram or a subway or whatever it is, you know that those things are going to get you from point A to point B. So you know, okay, the purpose is I've got to get from here to there, so I have to use one of these modes of transportation to get there. Okay, you know this stuff on a fundamental level. And this is very simple to think about, right? It is, but it also isn't. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason behind why something is in play in your life is the reason why you execute the action to move towards that reason. That's purpose. You go to work fundamentally because its purpose is to provide you with income, or, you know, support your family or support your children or whatever it is, right? There are other rewards, of course, to a job that fulfills you, but for the purpose of this podcast episode, we're talking about the fundamentals so that it's not complicated. We're not trying to complicate things on this podcast. We're trying to make them very fundamental and one step at a time. So each episode of this podcast is going to challenge you to tap into your purpose. And we're going to be rooting into purpose for each and every episode. Because here's the thing, yoga philosophy has a lot of layers, but one of the most important layers is dharma. Purpose. Dharma. Dharma is loosely translated to the inherent nature of reality, your reality. Yogis believe that your dharma creates fulfillment, joy, and meaning. So think of it as though you have this kind of goal or dream or big ambition in your life that's way out there. And you are, maybe when you get to that goal or that dream or whatever that is, I'm going to tell you right now, when you get there, it's not going to feel the same as when you thought about that before. But here's what lights up that fire in you, the dharma, the purpose. It's the path that you walk on to get to that goal or that purpose. Just like I said before, if you're hungry, you are going to find a way to get food into your body. You take a path to get food into your body. When you're moving towards a purpose or a goal, walking in that path keeps fueling the fire of purpose. Now, yoga means to yoke or to join or to harness or to integrate, okay? So whether you're familiar with yoga itself or you're not familiar with yoga, it doesn't matter, because everyone has the capacity to practice some form of yoga when they make decisions in their life to promote some kind of growth, whether that's maybe a healthy body, a healthy mind, a healthier attitude, whatever it is. But this path you're walking on to get you there, right? If your dream was always to be a songwriter, then the work you do as you get there is your purpose. You're lighting that fire. You're working towards something. This brings you inevitably into something super cool, which is this, a higher level of consciousness. That's where these episodes are based and they're rooted in. Higher level of consciousness. How can we apply real world situations where most of us operate subconsciously? Let's not lie to ourselves. We're out in the world operating subconsciously, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But when we apply real world situations to this purpose, this dharma, this path we're walking on, we are also going to then, without even knowing it, start integrating the mind to the body, to the spirit, if you want to call it a spirit, to your fire within, to your spirituality, your faith. It doesn't matter. Whatever you call that fire in there, whatever you feel like, because purpose is something that when you feel something or when you experience something and it lights you up, you're like, oh my God, I love that. I love that. That's where you start to make moves on the path down the road. That's what's going to start to integrate things for you. And so that's what Dharma purpose really is kind of founded on. Now, here's what Dharma is not. Okay, Dharma is not these things. And this is where we fall into traps. It does not mean that we're disconnected from the present moment and we begin to operate out of fear. We begin to operate out of procrastination, worrying, dread, anxiety, control. That's a big one, control, and manipulation or malice. We don't want to operate like that because those are purely things that come from your ego. And generally, when those types of things come from your ego, generally it's because there has been some kind of trauma in your life in the past that has dysregulated your nervous system, which causes you to want to protect yourself from harm all the time. You're like on high alert all the time, right? I know this. This was how I used to operate. And in some levels, I still operate like that. And as a human being, you are going to operate out of a need for survival because you're a human and that's how you're hardwired, is to protect yourself. But when you start taking it to extremes and start controlling other people and controlling what you do and how it affects how other people are moving, then we're running into big trouble. You also have no growth when you're doing that. There is absolutely going to be no growth when you're operating from your subconscious in this survival mode all the time. All right. But the good news is you have the power to rewire some of your brain circuitry. And through the topics we're going to discuss in season 2 of this podcast, this will allow you to focus one small step at a time on your healing journey, on acting instead of thinking about things or talking gibberish to everyone, because talking means nothing, action means everything, and where you will stay on your purpose. This is a podcast where we take action. This is not a podcast where we just listen and we talk about how lovely it was or how cute the content is in this podcast. This is serious business here. We are taking action. And we don't want to just say how lovely it was or do it for one day and then go back to what we've always done. This is a podcast where you need to take action right now. Because I have a news flash for you. You need to take action, right? Your husband, your wife, your partner, your children, your family, your friends, whoever, they're not going to take action for you. They're not. They're not going to take, they can be your cheerleaders. They can enhance you. You can move towards a goal with another person. But that's different than your own purpose, because your partner has their own purpose. They're their own person. Your children will have their own purpose. Your friends have their own purpose. It's not your responsibility to determine what their purpose is or to help them get to their purpose, because then what are you doing with your purpose? Nothing. You're ignoring it. And so it's very important to let go of the subconscious control we like to have on other people and move into who you are, because this is how you will have healthy relationships. This is how you're going to bring people into your life who are growing with you. This is how you're going to bring people in your life who support you and not who try to manipulate you or see you for something that you are not, right? We don't want that in our lives. It doesn't feel good in our lives. It feels like you're getting diminished or you're getting degraded by other people. And so it's important to stay in that lane, your lane of purpose, always. And people pleasing is so important for us to start this season off, because this is an area where we tend to lose sight of purpose. So I wanted to cover this purpose material first, because it's very important to understand that in order to make any change in your life, you have to understand that you are walking on a path of purpose. Maybe that goal or that kind of thing that you have down the road, you don't really know what it is yet, right? You may not know where you want to be. And I'm not saying, okay, you have to think about where you want to be in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years and it doesn't matter how old you are either when it comes to moving in the path of purpose. All you need to do is find something in your life that makes you happy. And I have to tell you, you have to take everybody else out of the equation when you're working on this for yourself first. So if something makes you happy in your life, how are you going to walk down that path towards that thing that makes you happy, towards that thing you want, towards your dreams? Every one of us has dreams. It's just a matter of, where are they? Do you have them locked up because you're busy controlling everyone else? Or can you unlock them? That's what we're going to try to do through this podcast. Unlock your dreams. So now let's begin the discussion of people pleasing by addressing that we're going to break the people pleasing topic up into 3 sections. Number 1, what is people pleasing? Number 2, why do we people please? And number 3, what are the action steps we can take every day so that we can be aware of how much people pleasing we're doing and how we can stop so much people pleasing? Now, the first thing I want to say is this. There are some, and this is not a majority, there are some instances where you do have to people please. For example, you need to people please your boss at work, because you don't go to work and just do whatever you want at your job. Now, if you want to do whatever you want, then you can start your own business and do whatever you want in your business. But when you work for someone else, unfortunately, you have to work for that person and you have to please that person. Now, the way that you please somebody at work is not doing things that are manipulative. It is to do what you're asked to do at work, as long as it's within the bounds of what you are hired to do. So we aren't people pleasing the boss so that we can get what we want, or you can get that promotion. Of course, it's wonderful to work towards a promotion, but we're not people pleasing people to get to a promotion. You're doing the work. You're doing the work that has integrity behind it. That's how you do people pleasing for your boss. So you're doing that by doing the best job in whatever job you were hired to do. Be the best at it. That's how you people please your boss. Another form of people pleasing is, let's say you have a romantic partner and you show gestures of love to your romantic partner. If you know that your partner loves a hot cup of coffee in the morning, and then out of an act of love, you make them one, of course, that's people pleasing to a degree, because your partner then is going to be happy with you because you've done this. But here's the thing, you're doing that as an act of love. You're not doing that so that you can get your partner to do things for you. You're doing that because it's an act of love. So that's people pleasing too, to a degree. So those are kind of the ways we sort of have to people please sometimes. But now that we have that out of the way, what really is people pleasing? Well, it's when you strive to please others, and when you are doing this, here's the thing. You take your own needs, your own wants, your own dreams, your own purpose, the things that are important to you, like your purpose, and you know what you do? You flush them right down the toilet. You flush them right down the fucking toilet. Now, if you want to talk about purpose seriously and living the life of your dreams and doing what makes you happy every day, people pleasing will throw all of that stuff right out the window. Now, I know this. I used to be a big people pleaser. And to some degree, as I mentioned earlier, I still catch myself being a people pleaser every so often. And I think that's normal for most of us, to catch ourselves doing things because we know that it's going to make another person happy. And you know why we do that too sometimes? Because we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we matter. But the work that we do on our inner self is where we truly find that we matter and we truly find that inner strength. Most of the time, compassionate, empathetic people are the people pleasers because they know how others feel. They can relate to it. So helping another person feel less pain helps you feel less pain as well. People pleasing is not only throwing away your own needs, but it's also worrying about if someone is going to like you or doing things to get people to like you. This is different than acts of love where you do not care about the outcome specifically or the reciprocation, okay? You are doing it because you love that person. That's the purpose behind what you're doing. Hey, I love you. Here's a cup of coffee. You don't care if they're going to get you a cup of coffee tomorrow, and you don't hold that over them. And you don't punish them when they don't do it. You're doing it out of an act of love. So people pleasing really at its core is to put away our own needs, our own conscious motions so that we can draw our attention all to someone else and how happy we can make them. Now, number 2, why do we people please? Well, here's a shocking truth in why we people please based on research. People pleasing is something that is subconsciously done because in your childhood, something happened to you, or multiple things happened to you for a lot of us, that caused you to feel like whatever you did in your childhood or in the past, or just by being you, being yourself, was not good enough for someone else. Albeit a friend, your parents, maybe your siblings, maybe people at like teachers or people at school or those kinds of folks, family members, whatever. So someone in your past or multiple people in your past made you feel like just being you was not good enough. Now, how you handle that kind of trauma is something you need to work through on your own, because I want to pause here and talk about that for just a moment. This podcast is not a substitute for seeking therapy or medical attention from a medical professional. We are not going to dive in this podcast into triggers from your childhood or what that means for you, when it happened, how you work through healing traumas. That work must be done on your own terms with people you trust and who are medically qualified to help you in that regard. So this podcast is about just making everyday changes in your life based on your own individual needs. And what those individual needs are, well, you got to understand that for yourself. And you may need to work with someone else who's going to help you understand that. Because I'm not a therapist. I'm just your friend here giving advice based on what I've been through and what I've worked on and what the research tells us and what the studies tell us in a general way. Okay? So if you are unsure why you specifically might be a people pleaser, it might be time to start looking back at your early years. And to start thinking about what points in your life were you just trying to be yourself and that was met with resistance. So you decided that when that happened and you were met with some resistance back in the day, right? You needed to modify your behavior so that you fit someone else's expectations. And you know what that does? That leads to people pleasing because you are modifying who you are at your core to please someone else because they didn't think who you were was good enough. I'm going to give you 3 examples from my own life here of this. Number 1, in the 90s when I was growing up, I was not accepted as a gay kid. I just wasn't. And so I tried to hide that and modify that around everybody else. So being in the closet when you're a gay man or gay woman or whatever your sexuality is, and sexuality is a private thing, but outwardly, if you're trying to find a partner and you're keeping your sexuality under wraps and lying to a partner about who you are not or who you are, that's people pleasing. Number 2, my parents were never supportive of me wanting to be a teacher because they felt that I should do things that would be more tough and toughen me up and blah, 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 blah. And so I actually abandoned that for a very, very long time. That's people pleasing. Now, Another example is when I first started working, my first job was at a local gas station that also was serving food and subs and sandwiches and things like that. Whereas back in the 90s, that wasn't as common as it is now, where when you go to a lot of different gas stations or convenience stores, literally there's people preparing food fresh for you. That was a little bit of a novelty then. And so I actually excelled at my job because of the processes, the procedures that were in place in that particular job. But there were others who weren't so good at it, and they made me feel like I was weird for being good at that. Did you ever play a sport? Maybe you were good at it and someone else wasn't, and they made you feel like shit. And then you have to try to like adjust your behavior so that you don't upset them because they're going to make you feel like shit, because we don't want to feel like shit. We want to feel like we matter and we belong, and we're human and we feel things. But when these other people at this job probably were threatened, and I was young and I was good at what I did, I started to get self-conscious. And then because I was self-conscious, I started to make a lot of mistakes. And this is because I was people pleasing. I wasn't bad at my job, but I let it get to me. I let what was going on and how people were treating me affect how I perform day-to-day tasks. And that's not something we want to do, because that's people pleasing. You know what that does? It bleeds into every other area of your life when you're doing that, when you're people pleasing. Relationships, other jobs, the way you keep your house, the way you keep your car, the way you keep your body, the food you eat, the places you go. I remember loving theme parks so much. And for those of you that have been listening to me or watching me or following me for a while, you know I love theme parks a lot. And since I was a kid, my dad used to say that only degenerate people went to theme parks. And so that made me feel like I was a degenerate, which basically is saying that people who are less than are the people that go to places like that. And so what I would do is I would either stop going altogether, and then I would be upset because there was part of me that was missing. See, part of my purpose in life is enjoying thrills like that. And so I have this purpose. I know that that's a part of my life that fuels me. And so when I walk in my purpose, that's part of it. I want to do things that are going to be purposeful and indicative of means to get to theme parks. So this stuff bleeds, though, in every other area of your life. Not standing up for yourself is people pleasing. Not saying no is people pleasing. Feeling guilty about boundaries is people pleasing. Constant apologizing is people pleasing. Agreeing with everyone all the time is people pleasing. So please, just understand this though. If you are like, oh my gosh, this is me, I'm a people pleaser, it's not wrong. It's not the worst thing that can happen to you here. But what it's doing is stunting your ability to grow and become a healthy adult who values their own self-care, self-worth, and it is likely started with other people who also were traumatized and didn't know what self-worth meant to them or self-care meant to them, and so that all got piled on you. This is not your fault, but you now have some tools to start taking with you to stop people-pleasing and move your life into the direction you want to move it in. So how do we do that? How do we stop people-pleasing? Well, there's a couple things. Number one, understand this. It is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to decide after listening to this episode that you are going to stop people-pleasing and so you're good to go. That's just not going to happen. It takes a lot of work. So that's the first thing you have to understand. Give yourself the grace to understand people-pleasing is something that you are going to have to deal with for a while. It's going to be a journey. So number two, you guessed it, purpose is what you are going to engage in when you're with other people aligned with your purpose. That's number two. Let's use some examples of this. Is what you are going to engage in aligned with your purpose? Here's some examples. Let's say someone asks you to babysit, but you're not making enough money doing that. Or maybe you're doing it out of the kindness of your own heart, but you're afraid to say anything to the person who asked you to babysit. Well, number one, ask yourself this question. Do I care a lot? In fact, Do I care deeply and wholeheartedly about this? Now, we're using babysitting as the example, but this could be anything. Do I care deeply, wholeheartedly about this? Number 2, do I have time to be doing this? Number 3, do I have the energy to be doing this? Number 4, is anyone else around who can do this? And number 5, coming off of the energy one that I just said, how do I feel after doing this? You know, there was a quote that I read months ago, and I even think I mentioned it on an episode previously. The quote was something along the lines of, if something feels exciting beforehand and during, but afterwards you always feel like shit, it's probably not aligned with your purpose. But if it feels like nervous before, and maybe it's hard during, or maybe it's sort of enjoyable during, but the thing is, afterwards, you feel amazing, and I mean long lasting, not for 5 minutes, long lasting. That's you're doing something that's moving you towards your purpose. So if you're babysitting all the time, and you're doing it for not enough money, or you're doing it for free, and you're just afraid to talk to another person about this, who you're babysitting for, you may want to ask those questions about that. Do I have time? Do I have energy? What does it make me feel like? Is there anyone else around that can do this? And how much do I actually wholeheartedly care about doing this? Is it in line with my purpose? Let's go to another example that might tackle something even more deep. What about someone asking you to go out drinking right now, but you know that your relationship with alcohol causes you hangovers and decreased productivity the next day? You should ask yourself the same questions I just asked you. Do I have time to be going out drinking because I know my relationship with alcohol is tough because I get horrible hangovers? Do I have the energy tomorrow to be dealing with this? Do I really care about this person, or am I going out to do drinking? You know what I mean? How does this make me feel? Ask yourself those questions. But you also, in this instance, need to think about how it's going to help or hinder your progress. Say you're training for a marathon, for example, and you need to run, let's say 5 days a week. I have never trained for a marathon. I don't know what the training is like for that, but I'm just using an example. Let's say you have to do it 5 days a week, or maybe it's 7 days a week. I don't know. Is having a night of alcohol beneficial for you if you're training for a marathon? Is it? Is it? I don't know. That's something you have to decide. And lastly, I want to hit you with some information that's really hard to hear. But if you want to get serious about turning your life in the direction of purpose, you need to hear these things. Here they are. Number 1, other people don't like it when you start to turn yourself around. They don't like it. Why? Because they don't want to understand it. They don't know how to understand it. Or they just frankly don't understand it. Remember that the majority of people that you encounter walking around out in the world have unhealed trauma, and they are living on autopilot. Get up, they press snooze, they might press it 3 times on the alarm, they scroll on social media before getting out of bed, they get out of bed and they roll out the door without any energy, without anything that they've done. They feel groggy, they feel irritated, they slurp down their coffee, or they stop at the coffee place, subconsciously tired, blah, blah. And then they complain all day because they're tired, or they complain that they don't feel good, or they complain because the night before they might have been hungover. And this is not indicative, by the way, for those people who do that. Doesn't mean they're bad people. I used to be that person. I was that person for a very, very long time. It doesn't mean that they're nasty people. Or it doesn't mean that those people need to be locked up in jail. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is there are a lot more people on this planet that walk around on autopilot than there are people who walk around with a higher level of consciousness. And when you find that, when you turn autopilot off and you get intentional, people don't like that. And so if you're a people pleaser, this is going to be hard for you, because those people who aren't ready or haven't figured themselves out or haven't understood their purpose, or who, aren't moving towards anything in their life. They just go through the day just to get through it. They may not be ready to come with you on your journey. And so they may have to stay in a place in your life that you need them to stay in at their level and at your level. And that's why when you start to level yourself into these different levels of consciousness, that friends change. Sometimes family changes. Your relationships with your kids might change, or your parents might change. Lots of this stuff changes. But what you need to understand is that it's okay for those folks to continue to work on autopilot. You cannot change them. You cannot, again, just like no one's going to change you, you can't change them. And your job isn't to go out and change them. Now, I have this podcast because I'm giving you information and advice as a friend. Whether you take it is up to you or not. It has nothing to do with, I'm just presenting the material. You can you can make the decision, or you can't, or you don't have to make the decision. That's up to you. But understand that when people don't like that you're turning your life around, just let them be that way. Because when you let them, your example of how you're living your life can either be inspirational for them or not. That's up to you, them, not up to you. Number 2, you're going to feel uncomfortable when you stop people pleasing. And it's a horrible feeling. It's very uncomfortable because you are going to battle a lot of resistance. Other people are used to you doing what they want you to do when they want you to do it. And being what they want you to be is not working for you anymore. And so when you stop being what you want other people to be, you are going to meet resistance, because suddenly they're like, what happened to this person I used to know and love? Well, the person that maybe you knew and loved wasn't the person that is truly who's inside. And so that resistance is difficult. So understand that's going to happen. And the third thing is you may see a change, as I just mentioned before, alluded to this. You may see a change in your relationships, or you may see relationships end. And this is not something to feel panicked or alarmed about. And some relationships take pauses and then you go back, you circle back to those. This is normal, but this is also healthy. And it's hard for people to understand that, but it's healthy when sometimes things end. You are a person who's going to be drawing more inward and being authentically you a lot more. So it's important to embrace this and know that you are perfect no matter what anyone else says. Because if you're taking actions to move forward and someone else is not supportive of that, well, they've got to go on their own journey and you keep on yours. I want to conclude our first conversation of this season together with this action plan. So if you want an action plan, here is one. And I am committed to giving you action plans at the end of every one of these episodes so you can take something with you. Even though I've given you a lot of questions to consider and a lot of thoughts to consider, here's what I want you to do. Every day, whether you do this in the morning, I do this in my morning routine when I do my journaling, but write down every single day one thing that you want. It might be that you want to clean the kitchen. It might be that you want to buy a car. It might be that you want to buy that house. It might be that you want to write this book. It might mean you want to write that music. You want to travel. You want to find a relationship. You want to find happiness with your family. You want your kids to succeed. You want this, Think about what you want. One thing that you want. And write it down. Look at it. And then move on with your day. And then tomorrow, write down something else that you want. Now, maybe it will be the same thing. Maybe it will be something different. But when you start doing this, here is what's going to happen. The things that you want, because you're writing them and you're looking at them. So you get your journal out and you're like, I want to clean the house. And then the next day, I want to clean. It's in the front of your mind every single day. Every single day. And the things that are in the front of your life are the things that you're going to feel driven to go towards with regard to the things that you want, your purpose. And 99% of the things that you're going to want have nothing to do with people pleasing. They all have to do with you getting to be in a higher level of consciousness for yourself. Therefore, your attention will start to come away day by day, slowly but surely. It will come away from what everybody else thinks, and it will come into what you need, what you want, what fuels you. I will be here teaching you more steps you can take every single day, like this one. Just simply writing down what you want every day. It takes like a minute to do, maybe even less than a minute. It might take 20 seconds to write down what you want. People pleasing is setting aside all of the things that you want so you can give others what they want. You're not writing in your journal what your partner's purpose is, or how you can make your partner happy, okay? Or how they can make you happy. It's about you and how you are going to move in your purpose. So when we're talking about writing things down, we don't want to write down, I want my husband to be a happy person. Well, of course you want your husband to be a happy person. You love your husband. But your husband and you can work on some things together when it comes to happiness. But the sole purpose of this is so that you are putting yourself into your own lane of purpose. How are you going to be a happier person? Because once again, if we go back to all the things that have happened to us in our lives and not feeling like we were good enough, or that we were, capable enough or smart enough or whatever we want to call it, it's mainly because other people are expecting us to be things that we're not. We don't want to expect our partners and our children and other people in our family and our friends to be things that they're not. They have to figure that out. You are such a unique individual with such unique talents, with unique ways of thinking, with unique modes in your brain that spawn so much creativity and so much heart into this world that when you focus on another person's happiness, you're burying yourself. And so the people pleasing, it's something big that we need to work on. And so every day, go into a journal, write down on a piece of freaking scrap paper or a damn napkin, I want this. I want this. What do you want? And share what you want, either with people you trust, maybe a therapist or psychologist or whomever you're working with, or don't share it at all. It's yours and it's special. And so are you. And so until our next episode, take some time every single day. What do I want? And watch what happens to you as you are keeping what you want in the forefront. Listen, my friends, the decisions you make every day when what you want is in the forefront are going to change dramatically without you even realizing they're changing. And then maybe in 2 weeks from now, maybe in 3 weeks from now, you're going to be like, I'm making decisions that are going towards this purpose. I'm making decisions that are going towards that purpose. It's just simple progress day by day. That's the secret to making anything you want a reality day by day. So until our next episode, I'm wishing you a lot of health. I'm wishing you a lot of happiness, and I'm wishing you a lot of peace and joy. And you want to know why? You deserve it. Talk to you soon, my friends.